Hello everyone, and welcome to English Narratives Academy. Today, we're going to learn about the life of Saddam Hussein. This is a story about how a regular boy became a very powerful leader in the Middle East. His life has many interesting and important moments. Think about a young boy from a small village. He grew up and became the leader of a whole country. How did this happen? What kind of person was he? His story has many surprises and big changes. In this story, we'll talk about Saddam Hussein's childhood, how he joined a political group, and how he became the president of Iraq. We use simple English, so it's easy to understand. This story is good for people who want to learn English and learn about history. Let's start this important story. First, we'll talk about Saddam Hussein's early life and how it all began.
Chapter 1. Saddam's Early Life. In a small village called Al-Awja near Tikrit, Iraq, a boy named Saddam Hussein was born in 1937. His father, Hussein Abd al-Majid, had passed away before Saddam's birth, leaving his mother, Sabatolfa al-Musalat, to face hardship alone. Sabah was a poor woman, struggling to survive in a harsh environment. 1. Life in Al-Awja was basic. Homes were simple mud brick structures. The days were long, filled with the work of farming and tending to animals. The nights were quiet, broken only by the sounds of the desert. For young Saddam, the simple life was not enough. He felt a burning desire for something more, something bigger. Because his mother struggled, Saddam was sent to live with his maternal uncle, Karala Talfa. Karala was a strong, proud man, a figure of authority in the small village. He became a father figure to Saddam, shaping his early ideas and beliefs. Karala spoke with passion about Arab history, about the great leaders of the past, about the need for Arab strength and unity. He instilled in Saddam a deep sense of Arab nationalism. Saddam was a tough and restless child. He learned to survive in a challenging environment. He learned to fight, both with words and with his fists. He was not always a good student. School was not his favorite place. He found it boring. But he was not stupid. He was clever and quick to learn things that interested him. He spent much of his time listening to his uncle's stories. These stories painted pictures of powerful leaders, men who commanded respect and changed the world. Saddam dreamed of being like them. He wanted to be a hero, a leader, someone who would make a difference. He wanted to be important. The village of Al-Awja, with its simple life, felt too small for Saddam. He looked beyond the fields and the mud brick houses. He saw a bigger world, a world of power and influence. He imagined himself at the center of that world. Even as a young boy, Saddam had a strong will. He was determined to achieve his dreams. He did not like to be told what to do. He wanted to make his own rules. He wanted to control his own destiny. This strong will, this desire for power, would shape his entire life. Chapter 2. Joining the Baghdad Party. Saddam's path to the Baghdad Party began with a crucial step in his education. Under the guidance of his influential uncle, Karala Talfa, he attended a nationalistic high school in Baghdad. This environment steeped him in the ideas of Arab pride and unity, laying the groundwork for his future political affiliations. The focus on nationalism within the school reinforced the beliefs that his uncle had already instilled in him. Following his secondary schooling, Saddam pursued further education at an Iraqi law school. For 3 years, he immersed himself in the study of law. However, his dedication to formal education waned as his political interests intensified. In 1957, at the age of 20, he made a pivotal decision. He dropped out of law school to fully dedicate himself to the revolutionary Pan-Arab Baghdad Party. His uncle, Karala, was a staunch supporter of the Baghdad Party, and this connection played a significant role in Saddam's own involvement. The party's ideology resonated deeply with Saddam's growing sense of Arab nationalism and his desire for a powerful, unified Arab world. The Baghdad Party's ideology was very appealing to him. The Baghdad party believed in Pan-Arabism. This is a big word, but it means a belief that all Arab nations should be united. They wanted a strong, unified Arab world. They also believed in socialism, which meant the government should control many parts of the economy to make things more equal. But above all, they desired power to achieve their ideas. The Baghdad party offered more than just ideas. It offered action. They were not afraid to take risks. They were not afraid to fight for what they believed in. This attracted Saddam. He was a man of action. He wanted to do things, not just talk about them. How does someone join the Baghdad party? In that time, people were mostly invited. People who agreed with the party's ideas and shown themselves to be loyal to them were asked to join. Also, being related to someone in the party was very helpful. Therefore, Saddam's rising reputation in the Tikrit area and his uncle's known support for Arab nationalism helped him become a member. The party's structure was like a secret organization. They had meetings. They had plans. They worked to gain power. Saddam liked this. He liked the feeling of being part of something important. He was attracted by the way they spoke of strength. The Baghdad party talked about restoring Arab glory. They talked about making Iraq a powerful nation. They criticized the current government for being weak. They promised to make things better. This message resonated with Saddam. It matched his own dreams and ambitions. Saddam found a home in the Baghdad party. He felt like he belonged. He was surrounded by people who shared his beliefs. He was surrounded by people who wanted power. He quickly became a loyal and active member. He worked hard for the party. He showed that he was not afraid to take risks. The Baghdad party was often involved in political conflicts. They were known to be very tough. They were willing to use force to achieve their goals. Saddam learned to be a strong and ruthless political operator. He learned how to fight for power. He learned how to control others. He also accepted that violent actions could and would be required to advance his and the party's goals. This early experience in the Baghdad party shaped Saddam's character. It taught him the importance of loyalty, strength, and power. It prepared him for his future role as a leader of Iraq. Chapter 3. The 1958 Revolution. The year 1958 was a turning point for Iraq and for young Saddam Hussein. The country was ruled by King Faisal II, but many people were unhappy with his rule. They felt the government was corrupt and did not care about the needs of the people. They also believed that the king was too close to Western powers, like Britain and the United States. This made many Iraqis, especially those who believed in Arab nationalism, very angry. Saddam, as a member of the Baghdad party, shared this anger. The Baghdad party wanted to overthrow the king and establish a new government that would represent the people and unite the Arab world. They saw the king as an obstacle to their goals. In July 1958, a group of army officers, led by General Abdul Karim Qasim, launched a revolution. They seized control of the government in a violent coup. The king and many members of his family were killed. The old government was gone. A new era had begun. For Saddam and the Baghdad party, this revolution seemed like a great opportunity. They hoped that General Qasim would support their goals. They thought he would help them build a strong, united Arab nation. But things did not go as planned. General Qasim, once in power, did not align himself with the Baghdad party. He began to consolidate his own power. He formed his own political alliances. He did not trust the Baghdad party, and he saw them as a threat. This made the Baghdad party very angry. They felt betrayed. They believed that Qasim had stolen their revolution. They decided to take action. They plotted to assassinate him, to remove him from power. Saddam was a key player in this plot. He was young and ambitious. He was willing to take risks. He believed that violence was a necessary tool to achieve political goals. He was assigned to a team tasked with killing Qasim. The assassination attempt took place in October 1959. The plan was to ambush Qasim's car as he drove through Baghdad, but the plan went wrong. The attackers were disorganized and the attempt failed. Saddam was involved in the shooting. He was wounded in the leg during the chaos. Despite his injury, he managed to escape. He fled the country, first to Syria and then to Egypt. This escape showed his determination and his ability to survive in difficult situations. The failed assassination attempt was a setback for the Ba'ath Party, but it was also a turning point for Saddam. It showed his commitment to the party and his willingness to use violence. It also showed his resilience. He did not give up. He continued to believe in the goals of the Ba'ath Party. The 1958 revolution and its aftermath had a profound impact on Saddam. It taught him the importance of power and the dangers of political opposition. It showed him that violence could be a tool for achieving political goals. It also showed him that survival was key. These lessons would shape his future actions as a leader. Chapter 4: Return and Rise to Power. After the failed assassination attempt on General Qasim, Saddam Hussein was forced to flee Iraq. He spent several years in exile, first in Syria and then in Egypt. During this time, he did not give up on his political ambitions. He stayed in contact with the Ba'ath Party and continued to believe in their goals. In 1963, a new opportunity arose. General Qasim was overthrown in a coup, and the Ba'ath Party took power. Saddam returned to Iraq, ready to play a bigger role. He was no longer just a young, ambitious member. He was now a seasoned political operator, hardened by his experiences. The new Ba'athist government was unstable. There were many different factions within the party, and they often disagreed with each other. This created a chaotic political environment, but it also created opportunities for those who were skilled at navigating the complex world of politics. Saddam quickly proved himself to be a master of political maneuvering. He was loyal, ruthless, and ambitious. He was good at making alliances and eliminating his rivals. He worked his way up through the ranks of the Ba'ath Party, gaining more and more power. One of his key strengths was his ability to build a network of loyal supporters. He surrounded himself with people he trusted, people who would do anything for him. He placed them in key positions within the government and the military. This gave him a strong base of power. He also used his position in the government to build a powerful security apparatus. He created a system of secret police and intelligence agencies that kept a close eye on everyone in the country. This allowed him to control dissent and eliminate any potential threats to his power. In 1968, the Ba'ath Party seized power again in a bloodless coup. This time, they were determined to consolidate their control. Saddam played a crucial role in this coup, and he was rewarded with a powerful position in the new government. He became the vice president, the second most powerful man in the country. As vice president, Saddam worked tirelessly to strengthen the Ba'athist regime. He focused on building a strong state, a powerful military, and a prosperous economy. He used the country's oil wealth to fund ambitious development projects. He built roads, schools, and hospitals. He improved the infrastructure of the country. However, he also used his power to silence any opposition. He cracked down on dissent, imprisoned his political opponents, and used violence to maintain control. He created a cult of personality around himself, portraying himself as a strong and benevolent leader. Saddam's rise to power was a combination of ambition, ruthlessness, and political skill. He was a master of political maneuvering, and he was willing to use any means necessary to achieve his goals. He built a powerful network of loyal supporters, and he used his position in the government to consolidate his power. This prepared him for his eventual takeover of the presidency and the years of authoritarian rule that followed. Chapter 5: Becoming President. For years, Saddam Hussein worked diligently as the vice president of Iraq. He was a powerful figure, but he wanted more. He wanted to be the top leader, the president. He watched and waited for his chance. He carefully built his power base, making sure he had loyal followers in every important part of the government and the military. By the late 1970s, Saddam felt that the time was right. The current president, Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr, was growing older and weaker. Saddam believed that he was the natural successor. He saw himself as a strong leader that Iraq needed. In 1979, Saddam made his move. He orchestrated a series of events that forced President al-Bakr to resign. It was a carefully planned power grab. He used his influence and his network of loyalists to pressure al-Bakr. The message was clear: step down or face the consequences. Al-Bakr, feeling the pressure and knowing that Saddam had the support of the military and the Baghdad party, decided to resign. On July 16, 1979, Saddam Hussein officially became the president of Iraq. It was a moment he had been working towards for many years. His first act as president was to consolidate his power. He wanted to eliminate any potential rivals, anyone who might challenge his authority. He called a meeting of the Baghdad party leadership. During this meeting, he dramatically announced that a plot against him had been discovered. He then proceeded to name those he claimed were involved. The atmosphere was tense and fearful. One by one, those accused were dragged from the room. They were tried in secret and executed. This brutal purge sent a clear message. Anyone who dared to oppose Saddam would pay a terrible price. It was a demonstration of absolute power. Saddam wanted to create the image of a strong and decisive leader. He wanted to project an aura of invincibility. He knew that fear was a powerful tool for maintaining control. He used it effectively. As president, Saddam set out to transform Iraq into a regional superpower. He wanted to make Iraq the leading force in the Arab world. He had grand ambitions for his country. He wanted to be seen as a hero, a modern-day Saladin, a leader who would restore Arab glory. He used Iraq's vast oil wealth to fund his ambitious projects. He invested heavily in the military, building a large and well-equipped army. He also invested in infrastructure, building roads, bridges, and public buildings. He wanted to modernize Iraq and make it a powerful nation. He also cultivated a cult of personality. He used propaganda to promote his image as a wise and benevolent leader. He controlled the media, ensuring that only positive stories about him were published. He wanted to be seen as the father of the nation, the protector of the people. Saddam's rise to presidency marked a new era in Iraq. It was an era of authoritarian rule, where dissent was crushed and power was concentrated in the hands of one man. His ambition, his ruthlessness, and his desire for control would shape the destiny of Iraq for decades to come. Chapter 6: The War with Iran. After becoming president, Saddam Hussein felt confident and powerful. He wanted to show the world that Iraq was a strong nation. He looked to his neighbor, Iran, and saw an opportunity. In 1979, Iran had a revolution. The Shah, the king of Iran, was overthrown and a new Islamic government took power. Saddam saw this as a sign of weakness. He believed that Iran was unstable and that he could easily defeat them. He also worried that the Iranian Revolution would inspire Shia Muslims in Iraq to rise up against the Sunni-led government. He decided to invade Iran in 1980. He thought it would be a quick and easy victory. He was very wrong. The war with Iran lasted for 8 long years. It was a brutal and bloody war. Millions of people died on both sides. The war became a stalemate, meaning neither side could win. It was a war of attrition, meaning each side tried to wear the other down. Saddam expected a swift victory, but the Iranian forces fought fiercely. They were determined to defend their country. The war dragged on year after year. Both sides used terrible weapons, including chemical weapons. Saddam's regime used these weapons against Iranian soldiers and also against his own Kurdish citizens in northern Iraq. The war was a huge drain on Iraq's resources. The country's economy suffered. Many people were poor and hungry. Saddam's focus was on the war, and he neglected the needs of his people. The war also had a big impact on Saddam's leadership. He became more ruthless and paranoid. He saw enemies everywhere. He used his secret police to crush any opposition. He became more isolated and authoritarian. The international community tried to mediate the conflict, but neither side was willing to back down. The war finally ended in 1988 with a ceasefire. Neither side had won. It was a devastating loss for both countries. The war with Iran was a major turning point in Saddam's rule. It showed his miscalculation and his willingness to use extreme violence. It also revealed the limits of his power. He had started a war he could not win, and he had caused immense suffering for his people. The war left Iraq weak and indebted. Saddam was now facing a new set of challenges. He needed to rebuild the country and restore his authority. But the war had changed him. He was now more determined than ever to maintain his power, no matter the cost. His future actions would be shaped by the lessons he learned during this long and brutal conflict. Chapter 7. Invading Kuwait. After the long and costly war with Iran, Iraq was in a difficult situation. The country was heavily in debt, and Saddam Hussein needed money. He also wanted to regain the power and prestige he felt he had lost during the war. He looked towards his small, wealthy neighbor, Kuwait. Kuwait was a major oil producer, and Saddam believed that Kuwait was unfairly profiting from high oil prices while Iraq was struggling. He also accused Kuwait of stealing oil from Iraqi oil fields. He felt that Kuwait owed Iraq for its support during the war with Iran. In reality, Saddam's motives were far more complex. He saw an opportunity to seize Kuwait's vast oil reserves, which would solve Iraq's financial problems and give him control over a significant portion of the world's oil supply. He also wanted to expand Iraq's territory and increase his regional influence. In the summer of 1990, Saddam began to make threats against Kuwait. He accused Kuwait of economic aggression and demanded that they reduce their oil production and pay Iraq billions of dollars in compensation. Kuwait attempted to negotiate, but Saddam was not interested in compromise. On August 2, 1990, Iraqi forces invaded Kuwait. The invasion was swift and brutal. The Iraqi army quickly overwhelmed the small Kuwaiti military and seized control of the country. The Kuwaiti royal family fled to Saudi Arabia. The invasion shocked the world. It was a clear act of aggression, a violation of international law. The United Nations Security Council immediately condemned the invasion and demanded that Iraq withdraw from Kuwait. The United States and other countries began to mobilize their forces in the region. Saddam underestimated the international response to his invasion. He believed that the world would accept his actions, but he was wrong. The United States, under President George H.W. Bush, took the lead in building a broad international coalition to force Iraq out of Kuwait. The invasion of Kuwait was a major miscalculation by Saddam Hussein. It isolated Iraq from the international community and set the stage for the Gulf War. He had gambled on a quick victory and a weak international response, but he had misjudged the resolve of the United States and its allies. The invasion also had a devastating impact on the people of Kuwait. They suffered under the Iraqi occupation. Many were killed or tortured. The country's infrastructure was damaged, and its economy was disrupted. Saddam's decision to invade Kuwait was driven by his ambition, his desire for power, and his misreading of the international situation. It was a reckless act that would have severe consequences for Iraq and the entire region. Chapter 8. The Gulf War. Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait in 1990 led to a swift and powerful reaction from the international community. The United Nations Security Council demanded that Iraq withdraw from Kuwait, but Saddam refused. He believed he could withstand international pressure. The United States, under President George H.W. Bush, formed a coalition of many countries to force Iraq out of Kuwait. This coalition included countries from Europe, the Middle East, and other parts of the world. They sent troops and military equipment to Saudi Arabia, near the border with Kuwait and Iraq. The coalition gave Saddam a deadline to leave Kuwait. When he didn't, they launched a military operation called Operation Desert Storm in January 1991. This was the start of the Gulf War. The war began with a massive air campaign. The coalition's air forces bombed Iraqi military targets, communication centers, and infrastructure. They destroyed many of Iraq's tanks, planes, and artillery. The Iraqi air defenses were quickly overwhelmed. After weeks of air strikes, the coalition launched a ground offensive. Their forces moved quickly into Kuwait and southern Iraq. The Iraqi army was outmatched and suffered heavy losses. Many Iraqi soldiers surrendered. The ground war was short but intense. The coalition forces used advanced technology and superior firepower. They quickly pushed the Iraqi army out of Kuwait. Within a few days, Kuwait was liberated. The coalition forces continued their advance into Iraq, but they did not go all the way to Baghdad, the capital. President Bush decided to stop the ground war and declare a ceasefire. He did not want to occupy Iraq or overthrow Saddam's government. The Gulf War was a decisive victory for the coalition. Iraq's military was severely damaged, and Saddam's prestige was greatly diminished. The war showed the power of the United States and its allies. However, the war also had significant consequences. Many Iraqi civilians were killed during the bombing campaign. The war also damaged Iraq's infrastructure, including its power plants, water treatment facilities, and hospitals. After the war, the United Nations imposed strict sanctions on Iraq. These sanctions prohibited Iraq from selling oil and buying many goods. The goal was to force Saddam to destroy his weapons of mass destruction and comply with UN resolutions. The sanctions had a devastating impact on the Iraqi people. They suffered from shortages of food, medicine, and other essential goods. Many children died from malnutrition and disease. The Gulf War was a turning point in the history of the Middle East. It showed the limits of Saddam's power and the resolve of the international community. It also set the stage for future conflicts in the region. Chapter 9: Saddam's Personal Life. While Saddam Hussein projected an image of a strong, unyielding leader to the world, his personal life was complex and often hidden from public view. He had a family, relationships, and a private world that contrasted sharply with his public persona. Saddam married Sajida Talfa, his cousin, in 1963. They had 5 children, 2 sons, Uday and Qusay, and 3 daughters, Raghad, Rana, and Hala. Family was important to Saddam, but his role as a leader often overshadowed his role as a father. His sons, Uday and Qusay, were given positions of power, but they were also known for their reckless and violent behavior. Uday, especially, had a reputation for brutality and extravagance. This caused Saddam problems and embarrassment, but he was reluctant to restrain them. His daughters lived more private lives, though they were still part of the elite. Saddam's personal relationships were often strained by his political ambitions and his need for control. He trusted very few people, and he was suspicious of those around him. Loyalty was paramount to him, and he expected absolute obedience. He lived a life of luxury, building numerous palaces throughout Iraq. These palaces were filled with expensive furniture, art, and other symbols of wealth. He enjoyed the trappings of power, but he also used them to project an image of strength and authority. Outside of politics, Saddam had some personal interests. He enjoyed reading, particularly history and poetry. He also enjoyed watching movies and listening to music. He was known to enjoy traditional Arab music. He also cultivated a public image of a simple man connected to his roots. He would often appear in public wearing traditional Arab clothing. He would visit his hometown of Tikrit and interact with local people. This was part of his effort to portray himself as a man of the people despite his opulent lifestyle. However, his personal life was also marked by secrecy and fear. He lived in constant fear of assassination attempts and coups. He surrounded himself with bodyguards and security personnel. He was paranoid about his enemies, both real and imagined. His relationships with his family were also complicated by his political decisions. His children grew up in a world of privilege and power, but they also lived under the shadow of his authoritarian rule. The stress and tensions within his family were often hidden from the public, but they were a part of his private life. Saddam Hussein's personal life was a mix of privilege, power, and paranoia. He was a husband, a father, and a leader. His private world, though hidden, was an important part of his complex and controversial legacy. It demonstrated that even the most powerful of leaders have a human side, though it may be obscured by the demands of their position. Chapter 10, The End of Saddam. After the Gulf War, Saddam Hussein remained in power, but his control was weakened. The United Nations imposed strict sanctions on Iraq, making life very hard for the Iraqi people. The world was watching him closely, especially the United States. For years, the U.S. and other countries accused Saddam of having weapons of mass destruction, WMDs. They feared he could use these weapons against his own people or other countries. Saddam denied having these weapons, but he did not allow UN inspectors to search his country freely. In 2003, the United States, led by President George W. Bush, decided to take action. They believed Saddam was a threat to global security. The U.S. and its allies invaded Iraq. This was called the Iraq War. The Iraqi army, weakened by years of sanctions and previous conflicts, could not stop the powerful coalition forces. Baghdad fell quickly, and Saddam's government collapsed. Saddam went into hiding. For months, he moved from place to place, trying to avoid capture. American forces searched tirelessly. They knew finding Saddam was crucial to stabilizing Iraq. In December 2003, American soldiers finally found Saddam hiding in a small hole near his hometown of Tikrit. He was captured without a fight. The news of his capture spread quickly around the world. Saddam was put on trial by an Iraqi court. He was charged with crimes against humanity, including the killing and torture of his own people. The trial was long and controversial. Many people watched it closely. During the trial, Saddam defended his actions. He claimed he was a strong leader who had acted in the best interests of Iraq. He refused to admit any wrongdoing. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming. In November 2006, the court found Saddam Hussein guilty. He was sentenced to death by hanging. The verdict was met with mixed reactions around the world. Some people celebrated the end of a brutal dictator, while others questioned the fairness of the trial. On December 30th, 2006, Saddam Hussein was executed. He was hanged in Baghdad. His death marked the end of an era in Iraqi history. Saddam's legacy is complex and controversial. He was a powerful and ruthless leader who ruled Iraq for decades. He used violence and fear to maintain his control. He started wars that caused immense suffering. His downfall was a result of his own actions. His invasion of Kuwait and his defiance of the international community led to his removal from power. His trial and execution brought a sense of closure for many of his victims. The end of Saddam's rule left Iraq in a state of chaos. The country faced years of violence and instability. The legacy of his authoritarian rule continued to affect Iraq for a long time.